ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my very first official vlog review of Hannibal. So for those of you who saw my review of The Great Gatsby, which I posted earlier today, link in the description as well as annotation here. For those of you who saw that, I already told you this, but I have really bad allergies right now. So to be entirely honest with you, I cannot speak much louder or make my tone much higher than this, so I'm just kind of stuck in this awkwardly low register, but I hope that you guys can jive with that and that you can still bear to listen to me as I inevitably cough and hack my way through this review. But I've been really looking forward to getting caught up on this show so that I can talk about it for you guys. It has been such a fantastic journey, and hearing about the fact that the show has been teetering on the edge of cancellation with NBC is the most disconcerting of positions to be in. I honestly don't know what I will do with myself if they cancel. You know, they're doing the promos for next week's episode. They're like, oh, it's special, you know, limited commercial interruption, and it's like, that is very little consolation for those of us who are like, come on, give us the goods, let's take this to another level. Season 2, por favor. I don't know, you know, the thing that sucks about getting invested in such, you know, wondrous, exciting TV shows as these is just there's a lot of politics that goes behind it, and there's not much that you can do other than be a part of the viewing block so that the company's like, oh, well, maybe we should keep this going. You know, even though the story itself really warrants continuation, I think. So fingers crossed, you know, everybody, I don't care what you're doing Thursday night, we are gonna have a freaking Hannibal party. Enough said, let's get this show on the road and, you know, show them up and say, hey, we like this stuff. We like the morally ambiguous psychological dramas, and we don't want you to take them away from us. So we gotta make our stand. So all that being said, since this is my first review of Hannibal, I'd like to make a few general statements about the show. For those of you who have never seen my channel or anything on it before, my name is Emily, and I do a lot of reviews of Dexter. That's kind of what I'm known for in these YouTube parts. I also do Bates Motel, The Walking Dead, and now this, and Breaking Bad is coming too, so, you know, all that fun stuff. So yeah, I will probably make a lot of little comparisons between Dexter and Hannibal, and if I don't that much in this review, then we can talk about it in the comments if you also watch that show, because I'm constantly making all these crazy connections. I can't say that my mind is wired as intensely as, say, Will Graham's, but you know, I try and make the connection. So if there's anything that I don't touch on in this review that you really want to talk about and has just been eating away at you, God, every time I think of this show, just all the food puns are ever present in my head. But if there is anything that is just pressing and urgent and you just want to talk with somebody about it who likes television a lot, then holla at me in the comments below, because we can definitely talk about that stuff. So anyways, this show, I hadn't really heard much about it until all of a sudden it completely took Tumblr by storm. And I'm a huge Tumblrite, so, you know, follow me on Tumblr and also on Twitter. I have both of those links in the description because I do live feeds and you know, live tweeting as I watch episodes, so you guys can see my immediate reactions to things. And then I also blog and reblog things about the different shows I like. So yeah, check it out, y'all. I'm all over the place, okay? But yeah, so all of a sudden it was just Hugh Dancy and Mads Mikkelsen were everywhere, and I was like, okay, apparently there's, you know, there's some new kids on the block that everybody's obsessing about. And so I checked it out. You know, I had all the episodes on demand, so I was like, it is convenient as hell, so let's get to it. And I did, and with every episode, I am just baited more and more. I love the premise of the show, and you know, it's funny because I was talking with a friend of mine, and she's a psych major, you know, talking about how, you know, the character of Will Graham, he's this surprising cocktail of personality disorders and neurosis, and it enables him to, you know, basically be a freaking Time Lord and see exactly what happens at all of these crime scenes, visualizing himself in the position of the killer, and, you know, the extreme empathy, and etc., etc. And, you know, she was talking about how that doesn't really seem entirely plausible. So, you know, I'm curious, to those of you other psych majors, if you guys watch this show, you should let me know what you think. You know, what would you diagnose Will with in reality? You know, what are these TV writers missing out on? But at any rate, so I love that it's not just about Hannibal. I mean, as fascinating as he freaking is in and of his bad self, it's really cool to see him in the context of this other individual who sympathizes with killers, and he's constantly working in this field where he's dealing with violence and with all of these ridiculously heinous crimes and just, you know, incredibly traumatic stuff. And he's kind of forged this, you know, Hannibal's sort of forging this friendship with him. And I have to say that the Hannibal, you know, the fandom, just the collective fan community revolving around the show is a very fun family to be a part of, okay? Especially if you're on Tumblr. I just die at the memes that are made of this show. I can't handle it, which is kind of partly why I don't want them to cancel it, because it's way too fun to break down the show at every possible angle. So yeah, it's just so incredibly rich and just smartly written and visually stimulating on every level. It is just so precise, and everything has such import and significance, and you don't get that in a lot of shows. You know, the little, you know, you've got the frayed ends and just kind of the loose ties here, just kind of hanging out in the breeze, and Hannibal is very tightly written. And I finally figured out, you know, that they took the original 4th episode down because of the Boston Marathon bombings and just all that craziness, and it was dealing with some controversial subject matter. So I finally got to see the clips that were made available in the United States. You know, because I was wondering what was going on with Abigail and Hannibal's relationship to her, and then Will, and it's just so, there's just not really another show out there quite like it. I mean, even though I compared a lot to Dexter, it's still, I want Dexter to meet Hannibal. I'm just saying, they should, you know, sit down and have a fabulous banquet together. I just hope it wouldn't turn out like the Trinity Feast in season 4, okay? But yeah, so let's talk about this episode in specific. I've been going on long enough about my vague impression of this show. If you're watching this, then you like it, I'm sure. So I don't need to tell you to like it. Anyway, so this episode was particularly cool in that we got to dive further into the psyche of Hannibal himself, which I think, you know, is the most interesting territory. And yeah, we see him in his interactions with the world and with women and with friendship, and we see that, you know, he's kind of a lonely guy. Like, he's got this huge, gorgeous home all to himself, and, you know, his hobbies on the side. But, you know, I think it was such a telling scene when we see him, you know, he opens his door looking for, you know, unexpected visitors / expected visitors. I mean, he's always got unexpected visitors. It's like, how does he even do what he does, you know? How does he do it? Like, people are constantly showing up at his place for food or for attention, and he's just the #1 guy on the block. It's like, how do you get out and be a serial killer and a cannibal? And, you know, you've gotta admire his guts there. He's got a good system worked out, evidently, except for the part that, you know, we see that he struggles with feeling isolated, and we see that with his interactions with his other therapist, which I think is interesting. You know, the therapist seeing the therapist, and he's presenting the one side of himself to her, you know, putting his best foot forward, so to speak, and, you know, she'd rather see him put all of his feet forward. Because with a guy like Hannibal, you've kind of got more than two, okay? So I thought that that was really interesting, you know, and that she likes what she sees, but she wants to see the whole picture. And, you know, he's trying to gratify himself in that scene, you know, say like, oh, you know, I got my shit down, you know, I got friends. And she's like, well, if you thought that we were friends, the problem is it's kind of not exactly that way. It's like, talk about getting super friend zoned, okay? You know, he's just like, you know, well, you know, like, we're friendly. It's like, nah, no, not so much, you know? It's like, poor guy. You really gotta feel for him in that position. And it's interesting because then he has his client who's coming in and just slobbering all over Hannibal's feet, and he's just like, love me. And that was, you know, and we see that Hannibal's very reserved in that situation because it's like he has the opportunity to have a companion if he really freaking wants to, but it's evident that he likes the thrill of the chase in a sort of way, you know? But it's like, who is there to chase, you know? With whom will it be satisfying for him to connect, and why does he need to connect? And, you know, and so then we've got Will, and, you know, we see that Hannibal shows up at Will's classroom where he is in a dazed stupor with his pseudo daughter in the woods with the girl and the antlers and the awkward, and I certainly do not envy these people's minds. I have to say there is quite a, you know, it's a sort of Alice in Wonderland kind of craziness to it. But yeah, you know, we see that Hannibal seeks out Will himself and is like, hey yo, I'm kind of bored, let's kick it. And then whoops, he gets wrangled into the whole Chesapeake Ripper scenario. And, you know, the main like crime plot of the episode was meh. You know, everybody's like, oh, it's gotta be the Ripper, you know, they're trying to make all these connections and all the odds are stacked against it, and then it's kind of proven in the end anyway. But, you know, what was really cool about this episode was just Hannibal himself. I also thought it was really cool how they used music in this episode as well, just to heighten the intensity. They kind of kept, you know, the general motif was there's like this classical kind of operatic vibe to all the different songs that they used in the soundtrack. And, you know, and we also get to see that Hannibal is moved by music in some way. And that kind of reminds me of, for those of you who have seen Dexter in season 7, this isn't really much of a spoiler at all, just kind of something about a character. But it made me think of Isaac Sirko, who he was saying something about his love of music or the opera or something to that effect, you know, someone else who's also, you know, got some violent side occupations, and you know, we see that he is very deeply moved by this. And I thought it was interesting, you know, they started from like the vocal cords out, you know, and then we see the audience and we see Hannibal engaging, and I was kind of joking about how it's like, oh, he's just imagining like how beautiful the inside of her vocal cords must be. But it seems that it's the music itself that is really speaking to him. You know, he's the first up on his feet, just standing out, you know, he is psyched. And then also it's interesting for the preview for next week, we see that the client of Hannibal, his BFF, and Hannibal are gonna have some kind of violent confrontation. So it'll be exciting, you know, to see Hannibal doing something in the present, because we've kind of seen a flashback where, you know, he attacks the girl and etc, etc. But I think pacing wise it's really good that the show hasn't gotten too far into the violence of what Hannibal does, you know. We got to see in this episode, you know, we see him like flipping around through his delicious little menu, or not his menu, his little recipe stash, and he's looking at all his clients and etc, etc. At first, like, I had this weird creepy thought when I saw, you know, he'd be flipping through the recipes and then like at the names of different people and, you know, clients and stuff, and I was like, wait, he's picking out these recipes and then he's looking at these names, you know, these recipes require meat, so are these the names of his victims? And he like keeps their meat categorized, and he's like, oh, I think I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna have a little bit of spaghetti with some Bob flavored meatballs. You know, it's like I don't know. I guess that's how I would do it if I was going to, which I don't plan on it. I like cows. That works for me. But anyway, so yeah, I completely forgot what I was saying now. I didn't have dinner, so I'm actually kind of hungry. Is it creepy that I'm hungry while talking about this? I don't know. It's all about those bad food puns that are incessantly made throughout the show, but I love it. It's, you know, it's pure irony. It's fun. I dig it. I think it works. But yeah, so now that I completely lost that train of thought, oh yes, just talking about kind of getting to see Hannibal and what he does. You know, we see him like cutting open things and making his beautiful food and his culinary masterpieces from various persons, and it was just such an intriguing episode. And also to, you know, see him, and Will asks him, you know, why he left his profession as a surgeon, and he was talking about how he killed a man, but it was, in reality, it was that he couldn't save him, and thus it felt like killing him, which I think is kind of an interesting response, you know, coming from a sort of sociopathic figure. I mean, for those of you who know more about Hannibal than I, would you say that Hannibal is a cut and dry sociopath? You know, I wonder about that too, especially in his relationship with the doctor who he was, you know, sharing wine and beer and conversation with. You know, it's like, how do those relationships work out for him exactly? You know, is it kind of like a power play? Is it genuinely, you know, is there real feeling going on? Is he fulfilling some need in his life in that way? I think that he likes to interact with women because perhaps they're able to sense more than guys do, typically. You know, like they have more of an intuitive sense of who people really are, and he kind of likes to participate in that, you know? That's kind of a sense that I get from him. But excuse me just a sec. What else? So yeah, lots of interesting things, you know, very cool Hannibal centric episode. We've seen a lot into the life of Will, but it's really interesting getting to have more of a Hannibal oriented perspective. What do you guys think exactly is going to happen in his friendship with Will? You know, he is constantly trying to affirm a friendship between them, you know, because Will actually, it's so ironic because Will sees Hannibal as his therapist, and he's like, are you sure? I mean, are you sure we couldn't just, you know, kick it out in the town, you and me, we're just having some chats and beers, and are you sure that we aren't like this? Because I'm kind of thinking this right here, you know, something. I think it's really quite interesting that contrasted, you know, with the relationship that he has with his client, who is just obsessed with him, and he's just like, I want you all over my body, you know. It's kind of makes me think of Tumblr, you know who you are, but in your interactions with people of the television world, I know how it is, I do. But yeah, so did you guys enjoy this episode overall? I most certainly did. I think it was a really good balance between action and intrigue, and, you know, that kind of reality versus fantasy and mental collapse and just everything that's going on. Yes, so leave all of your comments below. We can talk about so much more. There is always so much more that can be said about this craziness. So you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for watching, and I will continue to do these reviews. Luckily, I'll get to watch the next episode of Hannibal on time because I got my work schedule all situated. So, there you go. Alright, I will be back with more reviews. Thank you for watching again. Subscribe if you enjoyed listening to me talk, and eventually my voice will be less super bass going on over here. That is the hope and the prayer, okay? So, leave all your thoughts. Let's talk Hannibal. It's gonna be a good time. Bon appetit.